Hey, welcome to today's session. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. Welcome to another edition of the Tech Force Connect podcast. So today we're going to be talking about a couple of things. And for this edition, I'm going to be introducing you guys to a few other things I think are important for people to be aware of as we look into how technology is getting intertwined into our day-to-day activity. I'm Dr. Finn, the founder of F&F Group and also the convener of the Tech Force Connect conference and also the podcast where we have practical conversations about careers, leadership, and building for a world that is constantly evolving. So today we're going to be exploring questions that is becoming more urgent as technology is advancing. And in the age of AI, what still makes a leader truly effective, and why does human confidence matter more than ever? As we know, artificial intelligence is transforming how we work. It's automating processes. It's generating insights. It's even influencing decision making. But while technology is moving quickly, leadership capability isn't always evolving at the same pace. So the real question is not whether AI will change leadership. It's whether leaders are ready for that change. To unpack this, I'm joined by two remarkable voices who approach leadership from different but deeply complementary perspectives. First, we have with us Sheena Yap Chan. Sheena is a Wall Street Journal best-selling author, a keynote speaker, and founder of Confidence Through Visibility. She helps leaders, professionals, and entrepreneurs turn confidence into visibility and visibility into access. She is the creator of the Visible Framework, Voice, Identity, Spotlight, Inner Work, Belief, Leverage, and Elevation, which equips individuals to communicate their value, position their expertise, and show up with influence where decisions are made. Sheena is also the author of Tower of Self-Confidence and Bridging the Gap, and the host of the Tower of Self-Confidence podcast, featuring over 800 interviews with leaders across industries and listeners in more than 180 countries. Sheena, welcome to the Tech Force Connect.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Finn. Super excited to be here today.
We're happy to have you here. Joining her is Dr. Temitope Richard Banji, famously called TRB. TRB is a global leadership and HR transformation expert with over 13 years of experience spanning executive recruitment, leadership, advisory, HR transformation, change management, and governance consulting. He has partnered with boards, CEOs, and CHROs to align leadership and talent strategies with organizational priorities, and has delivered enterprise transformation across consulting, corporate, multilateral, and philanthropic sectors. Recognized as one of the top 100 most influential HRO leaders in 2025, his work focuses on building leadership pipelines, shaping culture, and guiding organizations through complex change. Dr. Temitope, welcome to.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here, and nice to meet you as well, Sheena.
Nice to meet you too.
Conversation.
Thanks. Excited to have both of you here. So today's conversation will explore why human confidence remains essential in an AI-powered workplace, how leaders can stay relevant as technology reshapes decision-making, the difference between capability, visibility, and influence in modern leadership, what organizations must do to build confident leaders, not just smart systems. Let's begin at the core. So we're going to start with you, Sheena. Sheena, okay. I'd like to start with you. Your TEDx talk focused on the courage to be visible. Many leaders today are brilliant, but they're hesitant to step into the spotlight. Was there a defining moment in your own career where you realized that confidence without visibility isn't enough?
Yeah, I think I had many moments. Especially starting my podcast, I've learned a lot from interviewing over 800 women on the topic of confidence and the importance of being visible. Growing up in Toronto, it was really hard, even though it was a very multicultural city. there wasn't anybody in the media that looked like me. And so I think that was the first moment realizing like how important representation is and having positive representation, because we're still seen in a negative light. And for me, it was important to put myself out there. And what started as representing my community, elevated to the importance of being visible, putting yourself out there, being in the spotlight, especially if you want things to change. You can't just work from the shadows. You can't work in the background. People have to know who you are, what you do, what you contribute. And with AI on the rise, it's a great way to leverage that. So yeah, I mean, for me, it was because of my upbringing. That's what drew me to doing the work that I do today.
Great. If you want the change, then you have to show up and actually make the changes. So that was really powerful. Thank you, Sheena. So building on that, Dr. Temitope, you've worked across institutions like Deloitte, Accenture, the MasterCard Foundation, advising boards and even C-suite leaders through complex transformations. When you first began working in the human capital consulting, did you imagine leadership will become so intertwined with technology and AI, or did the speed of change surprise you?
Okay, that's an interesting question. And absolutely, at that point in time, I think technology has always been there, whether I would like it or not, right? Technology has always been there. But from the space of leadership and, the kind of leaders and organizations I was engaging with, it was largely focused on structure, governance, and performance, right? That was really what they were focused on. What's our structure looking like? The hierarchical mindset was very strong. The governance processes, span of controls, and the likes was very, very strong. But technology was always there. However, what I would say has really surprised me is actually the speed of change, which a lot of leaders were not ready for. And I think that speed of change happened between 2020 and 2021. The obvious reason, COVID, right? It changed the dynamics of workplaces. It changed the dynamics of how organizations are structured. It changed the dynamics of leadership. So that speed of change now made technology the catalyst of change versus, how people were just working. So what then happened is leaders were now being forced to embrace the catalyst of change rather than, the way change was being seen as technology was just there, right? So I think a lot of leaders were not ready for that change. And now a lot of them are seriously scrambling, to catch up with the change. It's not impossible, but I would say mindset needs to change. So the leaders who would succeed today and tomorrow, right, are the ones who are comfortable not just talking about the change, not just talking about technology, but leading in uncertainty, because we don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. AI is coming up, AI is running, but we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So now leaders that would win in the coming years are leaders that are ready to lead in uncertainties and not just leaders that want to remain, static. So those are some of the things that I've seen in my experience over the last few years.
Thanks, Sarabi. One thing that stood out for me is being able to lead in uncertainty, which means that you have to be comfortable with not knowing the entire details needed to move forward.
Yes.
And that's the reality, as we've seen now, AI in the last 3 years have evolved faster than we even presumed, why actually adaptation in commercial world is actually extremely slow, not keeping up with the advancement, because leaders are still struggling to figure out how does this solve problems within the context of our business, and how do we utilize it to add value to our business. So I'm curious, you have interviewed over 800 leaders on your podcast, right? And you've had a lot of conversations. So what patterns have you noticed about confident leaders that they've developed and they've spoken about to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to talk about the struggles most leaders go through. People think, as a leader, you're strong, you don't go through anything, but really we all go through struggles, and learning to overcome them was the biggest hurdle, right? And realizing that we're going to go through ups and downs, good and bad. Leadership is not linear. It's like a roller coaster. Good things happen, bad things happen, and learning to work through that. So being resilient, being persistent, especially when you believe in what you do, you're going to keep moving forward. So being able to have that belief you're going to make it happen regardless of the circumstances was important. And also learning to value who you are. A lot of us, we tend to dim our light or lower our value when really we're more than enough to go out there and do something positive, create a positive impact. And mindset plays a huge part of it. You know, the inner work is important, working on yourself, working through your traumas, really having personal development is important, feeding your brain with good things, because if not, you're not going to be able to move forward or even take the first step.
True. Personal development, because a lot of times one thing we've seen about leadership is that you're thrown into it.
Yeah.
Play a good individual contributor and they're like, oh, you've become an awesome person that can manage other people. But nobody actually looks back to say,
yeah,
able to manage yourself doesn't mean you're able to manage other people's behaviors. So good to know that that's one of the things that you're seeing amongst, good leaders and leaders that are shaping their industry. So let's take a slight shift, Tiaro. Your work involves assessing senior executives across organizations. So when you sit across the table from leaders today, what qualities signal that someone is truly ready to lead in a world shaped by constant disruption?
All right, thank you. Interesting question again. And I think I love what Sheena said, very punchy. And I think to summarize it, I always use the concept of, in looking out for leaders in organizations of today, there are three things. There's the place of leading self, right? You must be able to lead yourself. There's the place of leading others. You must definitely be able to lead others. And there's the place of leading the organization. So those are the three things that, we typically assess when we are looking out for leaders that are ready to lead. For me, the biggest signal that I look out for across all of the type of assessments I do is not just, how the leader thinks, right? It's not just what the leader has achieved, but it's actually how they think, because it is a mindset shift that leaders need now. Technically, they're sound. Operationally, they're sound. Tactically, they're sound. But the success of tomorrow and what will make leaders thrive and ready is all about the mindset. So most times when I sit across the room assessing leaders, having conversations during interviews, there are three key things that I would say I look out for. And the first one is the ability of a leader to think systematically. Do you understand the ripple effect of the decisions you're making in your organization? And this also speaks to AI. Everybody wants to adopt AI. But is your organization structured for AI? Do you have a culture that can support responsible use of AI? Right? Do you have change management in place? Because it's not just about adopting AI. You need to make people ready and carry people along on the journey. The second thing for me is the level of self-awareness of the leaders. So we typically use EQI 2.0, which tests emotional intelligence, self-awareness, emotional expression, agility, independence, and all of that. Can leaders of today, are they able to reflect, adapt, and evolve into the uncertainties of tomorrow? Those are extremely important things that we look out for, because every leader needs to be able to adapt and evolve. Times are changing. Things are going to be changing. So those are some of the things we look out for. And the third one is, how does a leader define success? So that's one question I always ask. What does success look like for you on this role? What does success look like for you in this organization? And if success is all about personal achievement, then you are not ready. Because the success of a leader to drive their organizations for the future is about enabling others and building institutions that, will thrive and remain sustainable. That is the real signal. So a combination of those three things are things that we look out for, either from the place of hiring leaders into organization or while we are even doing leadership development. And I think those three things will continue, to remain there for the next couple of years.
True. I agree with you. Three things that stood out for me is being able to lead yourself, being able to lead others, and being able to manage an organization through leadership, through your role that you play as a leader to ensure that you're moving them in the right direction. And a lot of times everybody sees your ability to lead yourself as the only criteria for leadership.
Absolutely.
A lot of times that's where we have conflicts, where someone as an individual contributor is doing very well, but now it's positioned where he's not able to not even build the right skills. He doesn't know he does not have the right skills needed to manage other people. Or move organizational goals forward. So Sheena, let's go a little bit now into AI. So AI is transforming how we work and even how we make decisions. Now everybody is probably moving more towards either ChatGPT or Cloud and even using Google as we used to do about 3-4 years. So in your view, what human leadership qualities are becoming more valuable as technology becomes more powerful?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to be innovative, to have confidence in utilizing it, having trust with it. I know AI is a tool like everything else, but a lot of people aren't getting into it because they don't trust it. But it's a tool like anything else. It was like the internet. When it first came out, we didn't know what it was. It was unknown, but there's so many opportunities out there. And then there's also that fear it's going to eliminate a lot of jobs, right? Yes, it's going to eliminate some things because it's going to automate a lot of processes, but it's also going to create new opportunities. So it is important to utilize and learn AI to your advantage. So being innovative, being confident to use it, being resilient, because it's going to be a lot of trial and error you're going to be doing. And it's important to use a tool that can really help you leverage your message, right? I was the same. I didn't trust AI. And I said, I have to use it because if I don't use it, then I fall behind. Because right now there's a gap where women aren't using it because of that factor. And if we don't use it or utilize it, we fall behind again. And it's another gap that we have to face. So it's for me, it's important to use it and find ways to help elevate my voice. It's not saying it's going to take over everything I do. We have to understand it's new technology. It's not perfect. It's going to make mistakes, but it could also be a great tool to utilize your voice, be a soundboard for ideas and like learn things you never thought were possible. Right. So yeah, I encourage every person out there to utilize it because it's here to stay. It's ever evolving. And of course, if we use a tool for good, good things will come out. And if you use it for bad things will come out like anything else. So yeah.
True.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So tell me, many organizations investing heavily in AI tools, but far less in leadership confidence. So from your experience advising CEOs, but do you see a growing gap between the technological capability and the leadership readiness to move the organization forward with regards to AI and other technologies?
Yeah, the clear answer is yes, a very clear gap, right? And, I think last year alone, I was working on about 6 transformational projects, which included, embedding technology into their processes, either from an HRIS point of view or some sort of tool just to optimize processes, right? But one of the things that we realize is there's still a lot of conflict, right? Where a lot of investment is going into implementing, AI and some other technological tools, but leadership development has not kept that same pace. And what then happens is there's now a friction between the cultural behaviors of the leaders and the future that the organization is trying to, achieve. And one of the things I say to these organizations is that advanced system being implemented and leaders not ready to embrace, that drive will continue to create a bad experience for the employees within the organization. And a typical example is you're trying to institute a new system, right? But we also forget that there are generational dynamics within the organization that needs to be factored in. We live in a world now where we have almost 4 generations in the workplace. We still have the boomers, we have the millennials, we have the Gen Zs, we have Gen Alphas. It's a major clash where we have about 2 generations fully aligned to technology, one hybrid generation, which is the millennial, and the baby boomers who are struggling to embrace AI. So definitely technology changes how we work, but leadership determines people experience that change the dynamics of things for these organizations. So I would just say right now, in many organizations, the gap is clearly creating friction, confusion, and in many cases, resistance. Right. So while this gap exists, the only way to ensure there's leadership readiness is to implement a proper change management. And most organizations are leaving change management as an afterthought. Now, what I typically say is when you leave change management as an afterthought, it becomes crisis management. So what I encourage organizations is to do is to ensure proper change management where there is leadership alignment, leadership visioning, leadership readiness, a lot of trainings, a lot of retrainings, a lot of communication. And that is the only way we can close the gap. But there's clearly a huge gap. Organizations will struggle to catch up if they don't address it now.
True. Thanks for sharing that, especially when you talk about the gap and you go deeper into why. Because a lot of times we're very good at identifying a problem, which most of the time is the symptoms that we identify as the problem, not the actual problem, and then we blame people who have the problem rather than understanding the why behind it.
Yeah.
If someone is comfortable with something, they will be resistant. Like Sheena also shared that certain people also had certain concerns with regards to this taking their jobs, replacing them. And of course, you want to protect your source of income. So you're going to have certain resistance set up and come up with certain types of justification for it. So it's important we start not just naming and shaming the problem, but actually talking the root of the problem so we can fix and help people evolve their skill set while as technologies also evolve. So Sheena, do you think rise of AI will widen this confidence gap that we're seeing? And when those who already speak up get more opportunities while others remain visible?
Yeah, I think sometimes if you don't know what you know, it becomes something that's scary and then we don't tap into it, right? Technology, if we don't learn technology, can be frustrating, right? Something new, all these terms, all these things we have to do, it can stop a person from moving forward because for them, sometimes it's too much. And that's where the gap widens. So for me, I've always took it as a way of, I'm just going to play around with it. I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to learn. I'm going to fail forward. I'm going to make mistakes. And that's how I'm able to utilize AI and learn different things. And, the people who do learn AI, they're at a more advantage, right? I know there's been a lot of tech layoffs, but the ones that have been able to stay are the ones who've learned to embrace AI, to know that they need to use it in the workplace. They need to learn about it because it's a technology that's here to stay. So I hope that kind of answers the question.
Yeah, right. Accepting it, failing forward, because people think failing is a bad thing. It isn't, because you actually win or you learn.
Yeah.
Now you know how better to actually solve that problem in the future. And that's not just lessons for you. Those lessons you can use to save other people from making the same mistakes that you made while learning. So thanks for that. Dr. Temitope, before now, the traditional leadership models in companies especially rewarded authority and control. Because we're all in the office, it was easy to monitor. You could walk up to people, you could have in-person conversation, you could look over people's shoulders. But in today's environment, what new signals do you suggest organizations should look for when identifying future leaders that can survive in a hybrid environment of working while also keeping pace with AI?
Okay, I mean, it's a big conversation going on at the moment amongst a lot of organizations, rethinking their human capital strategy, rethinking their leadership strategy. And your question, if I'm to reflect on, let's say, 10 years time, right? A lot of organizations would actually wish they had developed leaders who can think across boundaries. That's the first thing, because now the world is becoming more interconnected. So first of all, leaders who can think across boundaries, leaders who are not just functional experts. Because there's been this thing of you're hiring people because they're functional experts. They've done accounting all their lives. They're great. They're good. But the future requires more than just your functional or technical expertise, but leaders who can connect strategy, people, technology, finance, and culture, especially because culture is going to be shaped drastically a lot in the near future. So leaders who can connect those four pillars and ensure that the culture remains same or even better, are the leaders that will thrive. And the future will reward leaders who are also adaptable in thinking, right? Leaders who are not just anchored on judgment, but in thinking, being able to create a safe space, psychologically safe space for people, building that trust in people, and also letting people also be able to trust them. Those are the kind of leaders that in the near future will thrive, because in a world of increasing automation, human judgment becomes even valuable, right? So a good sense of judgment is going to be important for leaders that will thrive tomorrow. And this judgment is not just appraisals, right? Is in the judgment of what systems and structures are we building, what technologies are we embracing, do we even have to embrace AI in our organization? If we have to embrace AI, what areas do we need to? So a lot of judgment call is left to the leaders, and for these leaders to make sound judgments, they need to also equip themselves with knowledge, information, data, stats, to help them, make well-informed judgments. So I would say those are the things that I would see required for leaders in the near future.
Oh, that's a lot. Leaders need to be prepared as the world is moving and they need to evolve. So I'll stay with you a little bit, Tiara. So let's fast forward 10 years into the future. What kind of leaders or organizations wish they had started developing today? You gave us some of the key things that they right now, how they need to do. But for looking for, say, 10 years, because we all were young, went through the Industrial Revolution, where machinalization, using equipment and all of that, industrialization, the agro-tech industry, fashion industry, garments, so many industries. Now we're now seeing, we went through the computer age, and now we're moving to another level of technology that's coming to change every industry. So in 10 years' time, which leaders will survive?
I would go back to where Sheena started from. Confidence. Confident leaders, right? And confident leaders most often make good decisions. Because in 10 years' time, like you said, the leaders of today need to be confident in the decision that they are going to make and the impact it's going to have on their organizations in 5-10 years' time. I would also go back to adaptability. Leaders of today need to be prepared to become adaptable to situations, because there's rapid change going on. We're speaking of AI today. We don't know what 2027 is going to bring. Even within same AI space, or an entire new technology is just going to come that's going to also affect change. And beyond technology, there's also the place of policies, government policies rapidly changing. So we need to start preparing leaders today, that can have that confidence to make sound judgment, sound decision. Also, innovation, or should I call it innovative mindsets, right? We need to start building leaders who already have an innovative mindset today, because it's also going to help them not stifle the other people they are working with. I remember when I started my career, it was almost like we had leaders that we didn't have a say. It was more or less a shove it down our throat, thing. Even if you have an opinion, you have a great idea, it was more or less like, who are you to, Sheena, I grew up in Nigeria, right? So there's also a cultural undertone to it where, your leaders will tell you, who are you to be speaking when I'm here? So you could not even express yourself freely. You could not come up with really innovative ideas. And look at it, a lot of the things that we were advocating for back in the days, right? The whole making work simpler, flexible work and all of that, now it's happening today. So I would just say those are the key things that, we need to prepare leaders for today. Just to summarize it: confidence, sound judgment, innovative mindset, and decision making, basically.
Great. So back to you, Sheena. Your visible framework breaks leadership development into a couple of components. So you talked about voice, identity, spotlight, inner work, belief, leverage, and elevation. So which of these top components do you find leaders struggle with the most today?
I think the biggest one would probably be spotlight. We've always been told that if you work hard, the results will speak for itself, and that's not true. You have to advocate for yourself. You have to showcase what you've been able to achieve, what you work on, because a lot of people think if they do the hard work, they'll get the promotions, they'll get the opportunities, but it's important to spotlight them. No one's going to know what you do if you don't share it, right? If you don't say it to the right people. Being visible is not about being in front of every single person in the world. It's about being in front of the right decision makers. So when you're not in front of the right decision makers, then the opportunities are given to someone else. And my biggest fear is someone who does the work and somebody else takes the credit. Because that happens all too often, especially for women, where they do the work, they're not in the board meetings, and then someone else takes their credit. And it's really unfortunate that it still happens today. So this is why it's so important to put yourself out there, to spotlight, to promote yourself. Especially if you have a big purpose, if what you contribute can make a difference in people's lives, why wouldn't you share it out? So, yeah.
True. I've seen that happen over and over again, where you do the work, especially if you come from cultures that it's about hard work. So your parents, family members really do the hard work. So you assume, okay, people will identify my hard work. And you see other people, I've had colleagues in the past that literally only show up to meetings and they're very good, they are charismatic, they know how to show up and talk about work that they did not contribute towards. But they get the spotlight because you did all the work and you really didn't care about being known. That's one thing that I personally, and one of the reasons we started this podcast, is giving opportunities for us to actually share some of the mistakes we made to save people coming up with their careers for making the same mistakes.
Yeah.
Because I did that the first 10 years of my career. Never talked about anything. Just did the work. I just felt that my work could speak for myself. Till you leave an organization and nobody who knew all the work you did ask you, okay, so what are you going to do for me? And then you see yourself having to start all over again because you didn't build a brag. Some people call it a brag list. This is the things I have done. This is what I can do for you. And literally that's even more important than a resume. Because people care about what you can solve today, not necessarily what you did for someone else.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Temitope, you have helped organizations navigate mergers, cultural change, even large-scale transformation. So in moments of uncertainty, because now we live in uncertainty, everyone is getting comfortable living there. What separates leaders who inspire confidence from those who unintentionally create fear?
So it comes down to how they show up in uncertainty. If you remember, I focused so much on this adaptability and being able to evolve, right? Because it's going to be evident in how they show up in uncertainty. So I would say it comes down to how they show up, right, in uncertainty. Leaders who create some sort of confidence are able to communicate more clearly. They are able to stay composed, for lack of a better word, and also give direction even when things are evolving, right? So that's confidence. This is where it now really comes out strong. And the other side of it is, leaders who tend to create fear tend to transfer their own anxiety into the system. Sometimes it's unconscious, but leaders who create fear, they transfer that, anxiety into the system, and people are not necessarily expecting perfection from leaders, but they expect stability.
True.
So I think what separates leaders who inspire and leaders who would create an environment for the future are leaders that are still confident in navigating uncertainties without them freaking out or, busting out or making it about themselves. I think that's something that, we should look out for in leadership.
True. Yeah, because one of the things a lot of people, and that's something you have to be self-conscious about, is not realizing that you're transferring your own vulnerability sometimes or lack of clarity on your side towards your colleagues or even people in public. Sheena, for someone who has strong ideas but feels overlooked in meetings, Therapy talked about, cultural difference and all of that. Sometimes it might just come from you second guessing yourself or not feeling like you're there yet to share your views in meetings or even in leadership conversations. What are practical ways to increase your visibility without feeling like you're self promoting yourself excessive?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we have to also dismantle this thinking of self promotion being bad when self promotion can be good. I think that's the first step because a lot of people, we've been taught that self promotion is not ladylike, it's too much, it's arrogant when really it's not. It's about putting yourself out there, being seen as an expert, and being able to take it, in small actionable daily steps, right? If you can't speak up in meetings, maybe send a message or write something in an anonymous suggestion box. Like there's so many different ways to communicate your ideas. People just tend to think if I don't speak in meetings, then the ideas won't get heard. But maybe just talking to that person who makes the decision might be good. Having a one-on-one conversation or sending an email. Like find 3 or 4 different ways to do that feels good for you. Start where you feel most comfortable and then slowly go and try something new. I mean, we're gonna get scared. That's normal. But if you don't do anything, nothing happens. And we always tend to think about the worst case scenario. We can also, it takes the same amount of energy to think about the worst case scenario and the best case scenario. So what could be that best case scenario when you share that idea? You could be seen as that go-to person. You can get that promotion. You can be seen as a leader. And so for me, I always think if nothing happens, if nothing happens, right? We overthink to the point where we're still in the same position. And I know because I've been there. So I'd rather share that idea and get rejected than not share it at all. I think it's also important to embrace rejection. It's part of life. We're going to get rejected. Like it's going to happen. And so when we can learn to embrace it and realize, it didn't work out, we move on to the next. So all these things really help someone just go out there. But it really does take with a mindset shift first. Like seeing that self-promotion is not bad. It's actually good. It's a leadership skill and it's important to practice it.
True. Right. One of the things that as you grow your career, you realize that self-promotion is actually not a bad thing. If you actually did the work and if you actually showed up, it's only a problem if you're pretending to do the work. Claiming what you've done is not a bad thing. How will people know you did it? How would you get opportunities to do more of the good work? And nothing changes if you don't do anything. So it's important that you're willing to actually try something out. And key thing that stood out for me is the rejection is normal. Like when I see people say, no, I didn't get this job, I didn't get this promotion, and therefore, so yes, it's okay to feel down for a minute or two, but it's not the end of the world. It's part of the process. Even if you didn't get it, you learn something along the way of putting yourself out there. And sometimes that could prepare you for something way better. I've had opportunities, my career that I never thought about, but I got rejected somewhere else, which was like a mock interview for the actual one that came so easily because I was prepared. I already had conversations on it with another organization. So now I just looked, I was reading a script. And I seemed extremely perfect for them that they wanted to move on in those type of situations and opportunities. So Dr. Temitope, you have been recognized globally from your work in inclusive leadership and also talent development. What do you think is important now that leaders need to do in the organization to remain inclusive? Because we know what happened with DEI, it became, something pushed that every organization embraced it. But we're seeing that it has weathered down or it's become a backburner for organizations the last, 2-3 years, and gradually organizations don't even talk about it anymore. So how do you ensure that organizations remain inclusive and human-centered rather than purely just efficiency-driven as we're seeing right?
All right, that's a very great question. I think one of the things I would say is even understand what inclusion means is very important. I think a lot of leaders understand inclusion to just be gender based, right? Which that is just a fraction of inclusion. Inclusion is not just about the gender. While that is extremely important, we need to factor, a good blend of gender. There's also the place of disability, people with disability. There's the place of ethnicity when it comes to inclusion. And one interesting one I experienced recently is inclusion is also even the diversity in the background of the people you're bringing in to the particular organization, right? There's a mindset of when we're hiring for HR consulting, we should only take people who are coming from consulting, right? For example, but inclusion is also even considering people who are coming from HR, but in the sectors that we also serve, because all of that, breeds, the inclusion that we're talking about. But how do we continue to remain, human centered is to understand the risk of transformation. That's the risk that transformation poses on a lot of organization, be it from the place of optimizing for efficiency, but we should not forget experience. That is the only way we can remain human centered. With all of the transformation that we're doing, with all of the things, the thoughts that leaders have, do not forget the people experience. And that is, I can't overemphasize it. No matter what you're doing, be it from a place of diversity, be it from a place of introducing new technology, new ways of working, the culture and the people experience must not be tampered with. It can only get better. So I feel if that is the focus of leaders, we would continue to remain human-centered in our approach of doing things.
True. Culture shapes everything. People might not remember the awards they get in an organization or how much they got paid over the duration they were there, but they remember how they felt while working in that organization. So Sheena, just to piggyback on this, many professionals believe hard work alone will get them noticed. So from your experience, what is the difference between working hard and working visible?
I mean, it's about working smart, right? Again, I talk about the importance of spotlighting your achievements, which is something most people don't do because they're afraid of being seen as braggy or too much or as arrogant. But it is important to showcase what you've been able to achieve, to share it out to the right decision makers, because if you don't, nothing happens. And again, someone else might take credit for your work. So for me, it's okay. It's important to showcase your work. It's not about just hard work. It's about working smart, putting yourself out there, being seen as that leader or the go-to person. Because again, if you don't say anything, no one's going to know what you do. And working from the shadows doesn't help anybody.
True. Important. Putting yourself in the spotlight and making sure that you're recognized for your hard work. Thierry, you've led cultural transformation programs across multiple sectors. So what leadership mistakes do organizations now repeatedly make during large transformation, especially when technology is involved?
I like that question because I'm dealing with one at the moment. And the biggest mistake that I've seen in the last 7-8 years of leading massive transformation project is a lot of organizations see transformation as a technical exercise rather than an exercise that is human-centered. Whether we like it or not, every transformation has implication on people. New management, new technology, new policies, new regulations, new ways of work. The people are always going to be impacted. So the biggest mistake is rather than focusing on the impact of transformation on people and addressing it, right, they focus on the technical, side of it. And the technical side of it, I'm talking about also leaders focus more on the systems, the processes, the timelines, but they underestimate behavioral change. And the impact of not focusing on people's side of transformation leads to a negative behavioral change. It leads to a lot of resistance of what seemingly is good. So it's not because people do not know this is good for us, but if they don't feel like they are the center of it, if they don't feel like the decision is they are factored into the decision, right, there will be resistance. So I think transformations fail because there's no focus on behavioral change. And that's also because, like I said earlier, change management has been more often than not an afterthought versus, starting with change in mind. So I think those are some of the common mistakes that makes transformation fail.
Sheena, for emerging leaders trying to build credibility online through platforms like LinkedIn or podcasts like this, what are the most common mistakes people make when trying to build authority?
I think one of the biggest mistakes is not, again, sharing their achievements, right? I think it's important to showcase what you've been able to accomplish, because if not, no one knows who you are, what you do, what you stand for. And even if you're somebody who is in business for yourself, one of the things that I don't see people doing is having some sort of call to action to connect with them, to talk to them, to work with them. That's so underutilized, right? Like, be okay to call that out. Be okay to have a call to action so that people can know you have products and services that can help them out.
True. So let's zoom out a little bit, Sheena, and I'll go a little bit into particular areas in general. So let's look back maybe to 4 or probably even as much as 10 years ago. When you think about the version of you that first chose entrepreneurship, what belief did you hold then that you have since had to unlearn to grow into the leader you are today?
I mean, I had to learn a lot of things. I grew up in Asian culture, so there were so many things we were taught to do or not to do, like showing up, being seen. Being seen was the biggest one. We've always been told that, never make any noise, work in the background, do as you're told, and that really doesn't help us. So being seen was really something that I struggled with a lot because it's something we were not taught to do. So even that, I had to learn to just be okay to be seen by people, be okay to let go of what others might think of us, the seeking approval, all that hurts us, right? Also learning to be okay to ask and receive help. Again, culturally, we're not taught to do that. We've been taught that if you ask for help, it's a sign of weakness. You're asking for a handout when really you can't do everything alone. And it's important to have support. It's important to be okay to ask for help, because if not, you're just going to be doing the same thing over and over again. And they say insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and looking for a different result. So, I had to unlearn just everything negative that I was taught to do and learn that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay. You don't have to show up as perfect. You just have to show up as yourself. And when you can do that, everything changes, especially in the world of AI. People are looking for more human connection. So this is the greatest time to be you, like your true self. I know that sounds cheesy at times, but it's so true. So, yeah.
Authenticity wins all the time because people are looking for actual humans. People want to hear your views. People want to know what's going on in your head. There's a lot of information out there, but people want to hear your perspective on those information and how you can contribute. So thanks to you. But TRB, when you reflect on your early years working in human capital consulting, leadership advice, including your time supporting organizations through transformation at Deloitte and Accenture, what experiences do you now realize were quietly shaping the leadership philosophy you carry today?
A lot, because I was just listening to Sheena, and it's so interesting how the African culture seems very close to the Asian culture in terms of some of the things, the mindsets that shaped us. And why I pointed to that is because different things have actually shaped my mindset about leadership today. But the ones that stand out for me are we need to move away from the place of authority, right? Authority and control. We need to move away from authority and control. The new signals are going to be influenced by adaptability, vulnerability, which I would explain in a minute, and the ability to build trust across complexity. Now, why did I pick on vulnerability? Because as a coach, a leadership coach, a lot of leaders can be vulnerable with you when they are seeking, advice. But within the organizations, they don't want to show those vulnerabilities because it's like a sign of weakness. And that's coming from a place of leadership as being seen as something that has to be with authority and control. So I would say a shifting mindset from that place of seeing leadership from a place of authority and control to a place of adaptability, vulnerability, and being able to build trust in complexity. Those are the traits that I think, and I've seen across the leaders I've worked with will shape the future of leadership.
True. Because one of the things we've seen is that people want humans to lead them. They're not looking for perfection. They know nothing is perfect. There's so much uncertainty.
Yeah.
But if you're coming from certain cultures, like Sheena and yourself has shared, that is seen as a weakness. So you're struggling with the reality and your upbringing and cultural changes and personal development to form a new notion that will help you be able to function properly in the new environment that we find ourselves. And having conversations like this is also helping us to educate people from our cultures that we do not need to be in these boxes. Those boxes were useful at that time for certain reasons that we don't know. But right now, it's not going to work in the intertwined cultures that we find ourselves where you go to cities with people from 20, 30 different backgrounds, and they all have to come together and work and add value to an organization. Both of you have built amazing careers across top establishments, and you've all operated in environments where uncertainty is constant and there are many moving parts. So I'll start with TRB and with the same questions to both of you. When the data is incomplete and the future isn't clear, are there internal frameworks that will help you make decisions with a level of confidence?
Should I say that was a tough question?
It's a tough question. I think something that's definitely underutilized is going with trusting our gut, trusting our intuition. As a leader, that's very important, especially when things are uncertain. We don't really know what that process looks like. It's important, to ask yourself, does it feel good? Does it look like it's going in the right direction? And even though you say you went for it and it doesn't look like how it's pictured in your head, everything will fall into place and everything will make sense as you move along. So I think in times like that, it's also important to tap into our intuition, learn to practice utilizing it, so that it helps us make those decisions, right? Because sometimes we don't have all the information. Sometimes we don't know what's going to happen. But being able to practice that intuition to know, does it feel good? Does it make sense for you to go forward? That's the most important thing. Because sometimes I've said yes to things I had no idea what I was going to do. I just knew it felt good and I just said yes. And I'm really glad that I did.
True. Thanks, Sheena. Terry, what's your perspective on this?
Yeah, I align very much with what Sheena has said. It's really a lot about intuitions, right? In those moments, I think I will just also coin it a bit differently when you don't have, the perfect data to make certain decisions. I would say you also anchor those decisions on principles, right? Not just information, because you don't have the true picture. You don't have the full picture of things. But as a leader, you must have gotten to a stage where you understand certain principles, which is where intuition now comes in, that guides those principles that you would focus on. So for me, I would say I would focus more on the clarity of intent, understanding the why this decision has to be made, even when there is no sufficient data to back it up. Understanding the risk, because I think that's also an area where a lot of leaders fall short. Not thinking, a lot of times we focus on the pros of things, but we don't focus on the cons. So in that moment, thinking about the risk involved and of course the speed of action that needs to happen. So in a situation where you have clear data, right, you can probably move much more faster. But in the situation where you don't have clear data, it might be good for you to also do some reflection, use your intuitions, but be very much guided. So yeah.
So if I want to kind of add to that, you're talking about having some touch points or milestones to identify if you move in the right direction, even though you don't have clarity on how far you go. And a lot of times when we talk about gods, people don't understand that gods most time comes from similarities of patterns. You've done something in a different industry that you think you can pull certain lenses and apply it here. It's not clear yet, but you have a semblance of direction to start, and that's what's important. So I'll stay with you, Thierry, also on this question for both of you. Which matters more today? We're seeing what's happening with AI and technology. Is it developing capability or developing the confidence to use the capability public?
I think for me, it's having the confidence to use it, right? A lot of people still fear utilizing AI, and I think it's important to encourage people to utilize it. Again, it's a technology that's here to stay. It's ever evolving. Again, it's like when the internet came, nobody knew what it was, how to use it. But look where we are today. We can connect from different parts of the world. We can have video calls. We can get news, in an instant. And so for me, it's having the confidence to use it. Like, you don't have to know everything, but just start somewhere. Start messy, make mistakes, ask questions, be curious about it. And you can eventually become, it will help you learn how to utilize it, and it'll help you develop your leadership skills as well.
True. You figure things out as people. TRB?
Yeah, I think the critical side of me would come in here because I always see things from multiple points of view, right? And I think capability without confidence is underutilized. So, like she said, you might be capable, but if you don't have the confidence to use it, then that capability is going to be underutilized, right? But I think a much more dangerous one is confidence without capability is risky. So if you're very confident, but you don't have the capability, you might, for lack of a better word, start looking stupid to people. So you can speak, you're very vocal, but without the knowledge, depth of the knowledge of what you want to talk about, right, you might look stupid and you might mislead people. So I would say for me, confidence is still ultimate, right? Because confidence often determines whether capability is even seen or not, right? So yeah, I'll just leave it there.
True. So build capacity, build capability before you go yapping. Because we see that a lot. We'll be in competitions where you're like, yeah, you sound smart, you're articulate, but everything you said is completely wrong, and your data to back it that you're completely going the wrong direction. But I like the fact that you're able to express yourself. It's just about building the capacity not to say the right things at the right time. So I agree with both of you. The both of you have worked across global systems. How has that exposure changed how you think about leadership impact and scale?
I think for me, it's just learning there's different leadership styles. Different countries have leadership styles as well. And so for me, I've always liked to bridge, East versus West. Like, I'm born in Asia, but I live in Canada. But there's still a gap, and being able to bridge that is important. So for me, being global is important. Being able to see things from different perspectives, different upbringings, different cultures, what their leadership style looks like, what's the gap, how can we fix it, how can we bring something from the West into the East and vice versa. I think that's something that, that's always been something I've always wanted to work with. So yeah.
True. Jeremy?
Yeah, I would say for me, I've just gotten to realize, well, not just gotten to realize, but the more I've been exposed to a lot of global leaders and global practices from Asia to Africa to America and Europe, leadership principles are actually universal. Leadership is leadership, right? But context shapes execution. So context shaping execution is now where we factor in the backgrounds of people that are, in the various locations, cultural backgrounds, personalities, and all of that. So I think the principles are same, but context should always shape the execution. There's no one size fits all in terms of executing leadership styles and all of that. What works in Europe may not work in Africa, may not work in Canada, but the underlying leadership intent should always remain the same.
True. So over to you, Sheena. For professionals building careers, there's local people just starting off in their first 5 years or figuring out just graduating from university. And we're seeing everything evolve so fast for us already in the industry in terms of technology. What is one principle that they should protect at all costs to be able to survive right now?
I think the importance of being persistent and resilient, again, things are changing ever so really fast, right? And it's important to keep moving forward if it makes sense for you, of course. If it doesn't, it's okay to quit if it doesn't serve you. But, I've spoken to people who move different countries to go after a career that they really believe in, and they were willing to start from the bottom and work their way up just to be seen, just to learn, just to do whatever it takes to get into that position. Like, I met a man who migrated from Africa to the US and wanted to be a medical assistant, went to school for it, learned English because English wasn't his first language, volunteered at different hospitals, and now is working at a hospital. Even though he's starting from the bottom, he's excited because he got his first foot in the door and be able to build their way up. And a lot of people's careers, it all started just by putting their foot in the door and work their way up. And so for me, if it's something you really, really want to do, I think being resilient, persistent is important, because there's no such thing as overnight success, right? All the people that we see that looks like overnight success is 10, 20, 30 years in the making. So that is a quality I think that's really important.
True. TRB?
Yeah, I would say the ability to think critically, right? In a world of increasing automation, independent thinking is very, very important. So the ability to be able to think critically about situations, about scenarios, it helps you come up with more objective decision and judgment. And I think that's something really admirable to organizations, whether you're looking for a job, whether you are moving to another location, like Sheena said, but that ability to just be able to think critically is something I would say, people need to develop and protect.
True. Critical thinking, your ability to be able to add value from a perspective that is yours.
Yes.
Always be needed in any industry, any organization. So I want to end this conversation with some personal questions that reflect more on your journey as a leader. So Dr. Temitope, tell us, if the version of you from 10 years ago could see the work you're doing today, what would surprise them the most about the leader you've become?
I think what would surprise my younger self most is probably not just the roles I'm holding, not the places I'm working, but perspective, right? My perspective has changed a lot over years. And I think my perspective has also changed because of the multiple locations and the diverse, type of people I've worked with. I used to see leadership. I used to think leadership was more about knowing more and knowing it all, right? But now my mindset has really shifted. That leadership is more about enabling others, and leadership is all about being vulnerable, right? That has really, really shaped my mind, shaped my thoughts, because when I was stepping into managerial responsibilities, I used to beat myself up when a junior colleague asked me a question, right? And I probably didn't have the answer. There's this unconscious, passive aggressive thing that comes within me, even though I don't express it, but I'm beating myself up. But over time, I've learned that it's okay to say, I don't know. It's okay to say, you know what, I don't have the answer now. Let's put some time in the calendar and figure it out together. right? So that has really changed about me a lot, and that's why I don't beat myself up on things. I've become a curious learner. I work well with junior colleagues. I'm open to learning from them, just to also show that a leader does not have to know it all,
True.
right?
True. So, same question to you, Shane. If the version of you from 10 years ago could see the work you're doing today, what would surprise them the most about the leader that you'll become?
I think it's just being able to realize my capability. For so long I just didn't think I was good enough. I didn't put myself out there. I would second guess myself, and the moment I just took imperfect action, it led to so many different opportunities, like writing a book for a major publisher, and not just writing one book but 2 books for them. That's something I never thought was possible. And to even write books on leadership, that's another thing, right? I never saw myself as a leader. I never knew what that looks like, what the definition is, being the poster child for it. So for me, it's just learning to put yourself out there, take action, take imperfect action, be okay to make mistakes, and just course correct as you go. I talk about in my book a strategy of ready, fire, aim. Just start before you're ready, take action, and course correct as you go. And that's how you create change. That's how you get results. Because if you do ready, aim, fire, you're constantly aiming for something that doesn't exist. So
True. Sometimes you don't know the target, so you have to try to just hit something, and hopefully you're gonna be able to get clarity as you move forward. So what we've heard today is something life-changing. Leadership in the age of AI is not just about chasing virality. It's about building the right skill set and the expertise to be relevant. So most importantly, it's about identity and having to continue building on each version of yourself that no longer fits into the industry that you find yourself. And today we've learned practical ways to build visibility, credibility, and leadership presence. Sheena, thank you for joining us today. TRB, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. And to our Global Tech Force Connect community, stay connected and stay on. Thank you.